Hello and welcome to the Zach Brown Show, the show where you meet old friends for the first time. I'm your host, Zach Brown. Joining me on this episode is Michael Ruffin of The Moving Platform. We discuss vinyl records, Disney bounding, and 90s Christian music. Let's get started. Joining me tonight is a very special friend of mine, and I think C.S. Lewis said it best when he said that friendship happens when one man says to another, "You too?" I can remember the Sunday afternoon, I was in Epcot Center meeting some friends for just some food and good hangs, and this gentleman happens to come up as we were kind of disbanding in our area and continuing on our little walk through the World Showcase. And through a very short conversation, we found out that we were both worship leaders and kind of similar upbringings and musical styles, and we're both Disney nerds. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I don't usually find this combination. This guy and I are going to be friends. And in a very short amount of time, Michael Ruffin and I have become super close and love everything from Disney, vinyl records, and everything in between. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
You too?
Yeah.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So I just want to sit and share you with our listening friends. You know, they might not know who you are. Michael has his own podcast and YouTube channel called The Moving Platform, where he does vlogs at the Disney parks predominantly, but also in the other attractions in the Orlando area, covering everything that's current, but also some things that are retired, and just a really great source of Disney fun. And I wanted to just have him come on and just share a little bit about his upbringing, who he is, and some of the stuff that we love in common. So, Mike, where were you born to start the beginning of the journey?
Well, to quote Steve Martin, I was born a poor black child. Sorry, greatest, one of the greatest opening lines to a movie ever. Right. Yeah, I was actually born in a suburb town of Albany, Georgia, called Sylvester, Georgia. That's where I was, I say born and partially raised. We'd lived in this little, semi-nice mobile home park. It was more like a neighborhood with individual streets. It wasn't like, just trailers lined up, but, so it was a nice little upbringing, and eventually we moved to Leesburg, Georgia, onto a 62-acre pine tree farm in the middle of the sticks. Our nearest neighbor was a quarter mile away, and we ourselves lived almost a half mile off the road. So you took a kid that knew city life and threw him in the country when he was about 12.
So would you consider yourself a city boy, or would you a country kid?
Honestly, I think I'm a little bit of both. There is part of that country life that I do love. I was never a big hunter. We went hunting once, and I apparently talked too much, so I was never invited back. I enjoyed fishing. I like fishing more than anything. But fishing and of course, like four-wheeler riding, which a kid wouldn't love that. But there are parts of the country, and I do love like that country silence and getting out of the rush of the city. But I also do love that metropolitan feel of being able to go to my local coffee shop or my local record store or something like that. And it's not a 15, 20-minute ride from the country into town. Sure. So there are those things I like, but there are times that, man, I'll put on some George Strait or some Alabama, and and the country in me comes out.
Yeah, and it's home.
So it really just depends.
When did music come into your life? Just the pursuit of guitar and things like that.
Well, guitar came in actually really late. I think like every good church kid, I was singing in church before I really could probably speak. I sang better than I talked probably. I would think maybe I was about I would say 3 or 4 the first time that I ever got up in front of the congregation at Salem Baptist Church and sang.
And where was that?
That is in Sylvester. Okay. That was before we moved. That was, like I said, it was a young kid. I actually have this funny story about the first time that I ever tried to sing the second verse of Amazing Grace. Because that's one of those things that everybody knows, Amazing Grace. And then when you get to the, we've been here 1,000 years. What's the next line? Like, exactly. And I think I was maybe like 6 or 7 years old. And I remember I was young enough that it was adorable and precious when a kid forgets his lyrics. So I kind of started fumbling, and then I started crying because everyone was laughing. And of course I was like, they're laughing at me, and was horrified. And to this day, I still don't know the second verse to Amazing Grace.
Now I would think it would be the other way around, that you would have had that just
traumatized
on your mind.
No, traumatized. I really don't know it. So the guitar was something I picked up when I was about 20.
Okay.
Yeah. I was that kid growing up. I was in band and things like that, but I was also I was a child of divorce. So I acted out a lot, which I think most kids do, when that happens. So my parents couldn't ground me. Because if they grounded me, I would just learn a musical instrument. Like I grabbed out my mom's Yamaha keyboard and started teaching myself what I could on piano, or like I'd learn the recorder, or you couldn't ground me because I would just learn a new creative skill.
I almost wonder if we should be grounding more kids.
I know. You couldn't ground me because I would just go learn to do something.
Now, did you find that when you were more with one parent than the other, that you would have a little bit more encouragement with your instrument or learning new things, or was it just grounding on both sides?
No, like my parents were always encouraging of my music. My mom always loved hearing me sing, and I was always a ham for performing. I always loved getting up in front of people and doing, little singing or little shows, little dances and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There may or may not be video proof of me about 8 years old in a radio station talent show where I danced for tickets to New Kids on the Block. Just saying, there may or may not be video proof. I can neither confirm nor deny that ever happened.
Well, I couldn't care less about the video proof, but did you go see New Kids?
Absolutely.
All right.
I was like 8. I didn't know any better.
That's right.
Who am I kidding? I'm 38 now, and I would totally go see them again.
Absolutely.
I would. So, but no, my parents were always encouraging of me playing music. They were, whether it be, chorus or band or something or anything like that. Or when I got into theater in high school, they were always encouraging, as long as my grades stayed, level and stayed where they were. I was kind of free to do, any type of music.
Well, you said you referred to your mom's Yamaha keyboard. Is that where you would say you get your performance talent, or is it both parents?
My mom will tell you that I don't get it from anybody, because I remember my mom singing in the church choir, but I don't remember my mom singing solos.
Okay.
So I think it was always kind of like my mom was in the choir because she wanted to be in the choir, but nobody in the family ever had like the spotlight. Nobody it's not like the Osmonds where all the kids were talented because the mom and dad were talented. It just kind of went down the chain. Sure. I may be the one person in the family. I think my cousin actually has a really, really good singing voice. Me and her, I think, are the only two that really were the music of the family. Everybody else, I've never really seen it. So, we weren't a musical family. It's just my mom wanted this Yamaha keyboard. My stepdad got it for her. I remember her playing it for a little while, but for the most part, I think I played it more than she did.
Yeah. Now, was your stepdad, was he a good guy? You like him? Was that kind of a cool relationship? Obviously, that can be very challenging when someone else enters that home and into that role. But What was y'all's relationship like?
That's a strange conversation. because I definitely, acted out as a kid. I was kind of a terror, I think, for him.
Intentionally?
Maybe
a little bit.
maybe a little bit. I don't know. So we definitely, he didn't have any kids prior. So I was kind of, his first venture into that outside of nieces and nephews, which he had from in his family. So he was good with kids, but like I said, I was kind of a terror on two legs. And so we definitely had our moments of, I got my fair share of whippings as a kid. So, but later in life, we definitely, we were always cool with each other. I loved him and he loved me. And I can't say, oh, I had a bad childhood. I didn't. I didn't at all.
What age were you when he came into the picture?
I was, I'll say probably about 6.
Oh, so pretty early
maybe
on.
I think he came in about 5, 6. My parents got married in 89. So I was 6 going on 7 when they got married. So really, like, even though I still have a really good relationship with my dad, my biological dad, my stepdad really, it really was, he was there for, 32 years of my life. So he really was, like a dad. It wasn't like a stepdad. It was really like a dad.
That's so good to hear. Yeah. So you get the guitar, you said you're acting out, looking for a little bit of attention. What was that draw?
The guitar didn't come until 20. Yeah, that was long after. So,
okay.
But
so what was the driving force? What was that thing that you were like, okay, I want to do this?
Like I said, I always, I always took to performing. Mostly it was singing. Singing really was the first thing. Singing in church, singing around the house, putting on shows with my bedroom door shut. So no one saw. Yeah, definitely. Singing was always there. And then, in high school, I got into theater and started doing musical theater and things like that. And that really gave me the chance to like do the thing that I loved in front of people with other people that loved doing it, in front of people that wanted to see us do it.
Yeah.
So it was, that's where I found out I was kind of a natural born performer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really picked up guitar just kind of as a thing to do.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm going to learn to play guitar. I taught myself. Who
would you say are your musical influences?
When it comes to like, as a kid, I definitely loved 80s and 90s pop. I kind of grew up, I was born in 82. So I grew up kind of in that perfect window of time where I got to, listen to stuff like, some people will call it bubblegum pop, but you talk about like Wham, and then of course, then eventually just George Michael. And then, you've got things like, the boy bands. You got your New Kids on the Block. Then you've got your Tiffany, your Paula Abdul, Debbie Gibson. Like I liked bubblegum pop music. I really did.
It's made to be fun.
So it was, and I was the perfect age as a kid that I loved it, and I really did. And to this day, that when Tiffany comes to Epcot, most of the time I think it's Food and Wine. She comes when she comes in for Food and Wine. I try to go because I'm like, heck yeah, it's Tiffany. It's the first redhead that I ever had a crush on. That's true right there. I think Tiffany was the first time that as a kid that I was like, she's pretty. Like
that, more of that.
Get more of that, please. So I like that. But then going into the 90s, I loved, that 90 to 95, 96, 97, that like first like half of the 90s, when you get stuff like Boys to Men And then, going into more, music, like I love No Doubt. Like, and then like I got into like ska and like, not, 90s. Like I say, I was born in 82, but I don't call myself an 80s kid. I call myself a 90s kid because I remember more about my 90s childhood with music and movies and TV, pop culture than I do with I resonate more with the 90s than I do with the 80s because I was 8 years old in 1990. So I don't, I say later on, that's the 90s. That was,
it's where you're coming into your own and you're kind of grasping what you really gravitate towards.
Right. And then as I became a musician, with guitar, I started listening to more, I found out that deep down I kind of had an older soul, and I always loved, one of the first CDs I remember ever getting, because I remember when CDs became a thing. One of the first CDs I remember getting was like the Beach Boys 20 greatest hits.
Okay.
I was like, this is awesome. And I don't know how it happened, but eventually, you hear, oh, you should listen to this. You should listen to that. And eventually like Pet Sounds, comes in. And that's when I was like, who is this? No, this is Brian Wilson. And I'm like, he's amazing.
Yeah.
So like when you talk about musical influences, taking the long way around to answer this question, Brian Wilson taught me complex chords and taught me, and taught me harmony and taught me that a song could have two bass lines in two separate keys and still work.
Yeah. The guy's a genius.
It's amazing. Yeah, absolute genius. And I've gotten to meet him and talk to him for like 60 seconds. And I can't remember what we talked about. And
it's all a blur.
It's all a blur. But there's such an amazing story there. And that guy, genius. When I hope it's a very long time from now, the day he leaves this earth, I'm going to be a wreck.
Yeah.
Yep.
So were you in church? You said, you were singing in the choir, you were, things like that. Were you in the church band as getting in more like youth group? And as you got older, was that a thing for you?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Definitely was. I grew up in that age where the praise band, the church praise band, which was always kids in the youth group. Before now, when you look back then, I grew up in this Methodist church with a piano and an organ and a choir and a pulpit. And that was it. And hymnals. That was life. And now here we go. Here's these teenagers who are going to bring electric guitars. That's rock music. That's the devil's music. And we're going to play, what is this awesome God song? What is this? I don't like this at all. What's a Jesus freak? That's not a good thing, and now you look at, both of us, being modern day worship leaders. I can't remember the last time I went into a church where hymnals were in the pews. It's all projected on the walls. There's even pews. Most of the time it's just chairs now, but it's almost all led by a band. There's no piano and organ. Now I so love, a traditional piano and organ service. I do that for Christmas Eve here at the Methodist church that I go to now, because we have a traditional and it's just piano and organ and it's wonderful. And it brings me back to my roots and I love it. But, most Sunday mornings now, it's all led by a band. You got a couple guys on guitars, a guy up there on synth, a drummer, a bass guitar, one guy if you can find a really good one, he's back there playing a real B3 organ, not a synthesizer. Like he's on a real B3, and the words are projected on the wall, and it's culture shock. And back then that did not fly. You would have never seen that. So I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure there were a lot of older people in our church that anytime the guitars broke out, they were like, oh God, here we go. Like, you know. But yeah, I was in the praise band and trying to do the thing that's cool now, and the thing that really brings a lot of people to church back when it was completely unheard of and not, not always welcomed.
Yeah. And really that era when you were growing up, there was a very pivotal shift in the Christian music world because, we had the artists that were, these gospel singers that our parents and grandparents grew up with. And then you kind of shifted into like the mid and early 80s. You had guys like, Petra that were trying to make Christian rock a thing and break into that like
Striper.
Yeah, Striper, break into that metal world and hair band. And they were really just trying their best to make it cool. And you and I both know not so much. But then you shift even farther in and it was refined. And we were getting our pop anthem singers like the great Michael W. Smith. And then, you and I love these guys, DC Talk, which, was now they're individuals and still fantastic. Newsboys, you had Carmen in there. There's so much going on.
Oh man, Carmen.
Yeah.
There's something you just don't think about that guy a lot, man.
But it was part of that sound, that early 90s. There's a little bit of hip hop. They were doing really everything they could to stay relevant. So for you as being a young person, church youth group, you've got a guitar in hand, you've come to the practice and you're like, guys, we got to play this new song I heard. It's the best thing you've heard. What are you bringing to the stage?
Hey guys, have you heard Flood by Jars of Clay? Yeah. And then, of course, Place in This World by Michael W. Smith. And, and I remember, I honestly remember hearing Baby Baby by Amy Grant.
Yeah.
Because again, I liked bubblegum pop.
Sure.
So, you hear Baby Baby by Amy Grant and you're like, oh, this is cool. I want to get her CD. And then you find out she's a Christian singer. You're like, what? Yeah. Like
one of those early crossover artists.
Yeah. Like, this is crazy, like, oh, okay. And then I remember, I think my first exposure into like that 90s contemporary Christian sound was we were going up as a youth group to a Billy Graham conference up in Atlanta. And we were on our way there, and our youth director at the time was like, yeah, it's going to be cool. You're going to hear Billy Graham talk. There's this band called DC Talk that's going to perform. And I'm like, cool. Who's DC Talk? And they were like, oh, you don't know who that is? No. And he put on, Love is a Verb and New Thing and Jesus is Still All Right With Me, that hip hop DC Talk. And you're like,
that's right.
This is cool. This is fun. And then we get there and I got to see the coolest thing. And I got to share this story with Michael Tate, who was in DC Talk, who now, of course, is in the Newsboys. I got to share this story with him just a few years ago when I saw the Newsboys live. We went it was right as Jesus Freak was about to come out. We were about 2 or 3 months away from Jesus Freak hitting. And so they come out and they do their show. And they come out and it's all the hip hop stuff. So it's all, like I said, Love is a Verb. Jesus is Still All Right With Me. New Thing. It's Toby Mac and in his hip hop glory.
Yeah.
And then like Billy Graham, they came out and Billy Graham comes out and does his thing. And he's like, those guys are going to come back and do a little bit more a little bit later. I'm like, oh, cool. All right. So they come back out later and they open with Help by the Beatles. I'm like, of course, at the time, I can't remember how old I was, but I don't even think I had heard Help by the Beatles at the time. So I was like, that's cool. All right. And then they launched into stuff that you hear on the Jesus Freak album. And you're like, this isn't the same group. Yeah. This is not the same band. And I was just floored. I was like, oh, you can do this for a living?
We're going from this bubblegum pop and hip hop to guitars tuned to drop D.
Yeah. I'm like, you can make a living doing music that is like that's Christian, but also also rock. I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And that, so, we came back, and of course Jesus Freak comes out a few months later, and I go down to my Christian bookstore and I get a copy. And I honestly, I think I played Jesus Freak so many times. I burned the disc, I burned holes in it. So, you've got stuff like that. And then, of course, I think the song that you and I both, are not big fans of. You've got, you watch and you see Christian music go to the radio, which of course you can really thank partially to Mercy Me's I Can Only Imagine. I'm just not, yeah.
So here's the thing. So many people love I Can Only Imagine. They made the movie. People have raved about it. It has a fantastic message. It's a good song, but it's coming from, I think it's because we come from that world of I say performing Christian music. How many times I can count, if I had $1 every time somebody asked me, can I sing I Can Only Imagine by Mercy Me? Man, I'd be set for a little while. Maybe not for life, but I wouldn't have to work for a minute. I don't remember how old I was when that hit and was just everywhere. It was just crazy. But I remember being in a homeschool church drama class and having to do motions to that song, and it was miserable. And then probably a couple months later, my great grandmother passed away, and they played that at her funeral because, that's what you did then. And I remember it was just terrible. I already hated the song. Now they're playing it at my Nana's funeral. And I look over, Tiffany Worrell, if you're listening, this is you. I look over, and Tiffany, who was in that same group as me doing the motions, is sitting there in the seat doing the motions for this song that we came up with at my great grandmother's funeral. I laugh now. It's terrible, but if you never
had to do interpretive dance to something, Christian, in your youth group, you definitely did not have the 90s youth group experience.
Exactly. Somebody's mom had flags and the sticks. It's amazing that there were not more people in, like Methodist and Assembly of God Church that were not having their eyes plucked out with sticks.
I'm pretty sure we did something to Breath of Heaven by Amy Grant.
Probably.
Yeah. I definitely remember, like I said, I remember when I learned that Christian music could be fun. When I first heard Big House by Audio Adrenaline.
Talking about playing football.
This is awesome. This is a cool little song.
Yeah.
If you didn't do interpretive dance to something Christian music in your youth group, I don't know if you grew up in the 90s.
And one of those times that you did it was probably set to Shackles by Mary Mary.
That's another one. Yeah.
I think that's the official title. But again, you hear the first little bit of that song and I go, oh, here we go. You're throwing it back.
You can imagine. You hear those songs and you can just imagine like a dance team doing something to it.
So you're in the band, you're singing the songs, but are you the lead guy? Or are you just kind of this guitar player back here hoping that you get a song every so often?
This is all before I ever picked up a guitar.
Okay.
I was in my teens at this time. So a lot of times I was just singing it because that's what I could do.
Sure.
I was a singer, and eventually I pick up, going through middle school, I got into band and I started with percussion, which I wanted to do saxophone, but I got braces like just a few days before the guy from the music store came in and let everybody try instruments and see what they kind of took to and see what they enjoyed playing, or, kind of see what they, kind of what they were vibing on. And so I had braces, so I couldn't do anything with a mouthpiece or a reed because I couldn't put any pressure, on my teeth. So I became a drummer.
Okay.
Because it didn't require the use of my mouth.
Unless you were doing it very wrong.
Well, I mean, unless you're in an a cappella group and you're doing some beatbox.
Yeah.
Just saying. So middle school, I did the percussion thing, and then of course in high school, I learned, what's a drum set? Oh, I want to learn this. So eventually there were some occasions where I actually became kind of the drummer in our little praise thing. So I got to do that a handful of times. And then eventually my parents got me my own drum set and drove them insane with that. Yeah. But I would lug that thing down there and set up, and we were terrible, but we were doing it for Jesus. And
that's
when
right.
You're doing it for when you're doing it for that, no one's going to tell you you're terrible.
I don't know. I did it for a while, and I had plenty of people to tell us that we were terrible, but I'm a better person.
They shouldn't tell you you're terrible, but every once in a while you'll get that one old lady that's like, that was, just tap you on the shoulder.
that was bad.
That one just smiles at you, hands you a butterscotch candy, and walks off.
Or those little strawberry bonbon things that just show up. I don't know where they come from. I've never seen them in stores. No, they just show up in people's pockets. It's scary.
When you turn 60, you just wake up every day with 2 of them in your pocket.
They get sent in with bills and notices from AARP.
Yeah, you just wake up every day with 2 strawberry candies in your pockets, and you just have the knowledge that you're supposed to give those away.
That's right. These aren't for you.
You don't eat them. No, you don't eat them. You have to give them away. So that's how it goes. You just give them away to the kids at church or the kids at the post office or whatever. You just
right.
Give out
You're
little
a random
candies.
Child. Here's a consumable.
Here's a candy. It's wrapped. It's safe.
That's fantastic. So at that time, you're singing, you're learning the drums, guitar's kind of down the road. Are you thinking, this is what I want to do with my life? Or what is in your young mind? What is your trajectory?
Music was always something I loved to do, but it was never what I wanted to do. Like, there may have been some jokes about, like when I got into theater, like, I'm going to go be on Broadway, because I thought that was just easy.
Sure.
You just show up at a theater and be like, I want to be in your show. And they go, okay.
Yeah.
It's just like auditioning, down at the high school. You just go in there, you do your little thing, you learn your little jazz square dance combo, and you maybe, if you're really good, you might get to read a few lines, and then in a couple of days, the director's going to call you, and that's it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's how Broadway works.
You don't show up to Broadway, you get tree number 4.
Yes. So I think there was a little bit of time where I was like, I'm going to go and be on Broadway. And then, of course, it didn't. So, no. Honestly, being like a worship leader, being a song leader for a church, that did not come in until I was about 33.
Okay.
It's relatively new. It's only about 5-6 years, the last 5-6 years. It's new that I've really come back to that, because here's what I love to do, and I love to do it for this reason. So here we go.
So when did you make your way from, so you were in Sylvester.
Yep.
And I know you moved, because I know your background, you moved to Louisiana.
Yes.
Now what brought that about?
I came down here. I was one of those kids that was always kind of figuring things out. Like, I never knew what I wanted to do. And then some days I still don't think I do. So I came down to Florida because a buddy of mine wanted to go and interview for the Walt Disney World College program. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, you blow off a semester of college and go work at Disney World. And I was like, that sounds fun. Why not? So we go over to Valdosta State and, and interview, and I got hired and he didn't. So I came down to Orlando. I did my college program, which is a whole other story. Did my college program, met great friends. And after that was over, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. So funny enough, I was dating a girl during my college program who went to Ohio State. So
Oh, wait.
at night, at like 20 years old, I was like, I'm in love and I'm going to follow, so I followed a girl to Columbus, Ohio. That lasted about 6 months. And then I was like, what am I going to do now? I'm like 21. I have no life plan at all. So one of my friends that lived above me during my college program lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And they happened to have a 2-bedroom apartment with a spare room. And they were like, hey, come down here. So I got on a Greyhound and moved to Louisiana.
From
and
Columbus?
I was there. Yeah. And I was there for I was there for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you have one place more than another that you consider that's home?
I jokingly say, okay, look, I was born and raised in Georgia. There's no denying it. You talk to me long enough, you'll hear the accent coming out. There's no denying that I'm deep down, I'm a Georgia country boy. I really am. But I always say that my heart, home is where the heart is. My heart will always be in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. I loved it. So enough that the plan was always that I was actually going to move there for a little while and then come back to Florida and go back possibly working for Disney again. And I never made that second part of that journey never happened. It stopped me there because I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the food. I loved the culture. I loved the music. I loved everything about it. Yeah. So I always say, like, if home is where the heart is, my heart will always belong to Louisiana. It will.
Now, you said you did the college program for a little bit. Just kind of in short, mm-hmm. What did you do in your time there?
I worked as worked at Test Track. So this was back in 2002. Horizons had just been demolished. It was a mountain of dirt and broken dreams. Broken horizons, as I guess we'll say. And Test Track was the only thrill attraction, but it also was plagued with the fact that it broke down constantly. So I spent most of my time telling people Test Track was down. That was what I really did spend most of my time doing.
Hi, that thing you came to do, you can't. Thanks for coming.
Can't do it. You'd see people come running. It was like the wildebeest, stampede in Lion King. Like you just see them, like you're standing out front of Test Track and you see people just running from the hub of Epcot, right where the fountain used to be, and running through that breezeway and making that sharp right towards Test Track, and they would just come running at full speed. Because this is back in the day when you still went to the attractions and got your fast pass with your ticket. There was no My Disney Experience. There was no smartphones. We barely had beepers. So people would just come running and be like, no, ride closed.
You were Michael Ruffin, crusher of dreams.
Very much so.
We'll be right back after this message. I love coffee. It's part of my morning routine. Without it, I just don't feel like myself. Allow me to introduce you to the official coffee of The Zach Brown Show. Located in Columbia, Tennessee, Oak Hill Farm Coffee Roasters offers a delicious variety of roasts and blends. Every bag of coffee you buy will help mission and humanitarian projects all around the world. What's better than a cup of coffee? A cup of coffee that helped make a difference. Oak Hill Farm Coffee Roasters. Wake up, drink coffee, and go do something great. Now you are a Disney fan. You are, you said that theater is a deep love of yours, part of your kind of early shaping you. Would you say that has a hand in Disney bounding?
Yeah, it does, because in a way, to get into, because you said Disney bounding, to kind of segue to the Disney bounding side of it. If you don't know
explain that for those who don't know.
Okay. So Disney bounding, a lot of people, when they see Disney bounding, they lump it up with cosplay. And Disney bounding could not be any further away from cosplay. I jokingly say that people say Disney bounding is cosplay. Like people say that taking rideshare is called taking an Uber. You can take an Uber, you can take a Lyft, there's options out there.
Mm-hmm.
But, when people say Disney bounding, they think, oh, it's cosplay. It's not cosplay. It's actually created to be a loophole around cosplay because Disney has rules about costumes. You can't wear costumes into the parks. I've seen
too many issues would come with that.
I've seen people get turned away at the gate, and then I've seen people get walked out because they were attempting to bound, but they cosplayed.
Yeah. You can't have grown people dressed as Disney characters. It's just It's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
It is because guests are not all guests are not intelligent. So if you cosplay too well, they will get confused. Okay. And they will think that guy dressed as Jack Sparrow is Jack Sparrow. And it's up to that guy to tell them, I'm not the real Jack Sparrow. Some of those people don't do that. So now there are costume rules. Disney bounding gets around that in that it's not a costume. Disney bounding is a fashionable outfit choice that is inspired and built to not even sometimes to look alike. It's honestly inspired or based on Disney characters, Disney attractions. I've seen people cosplay as adult, see, I even said it there. I've seen people Disney bound as a Dole Whip. I'm dead serious.
That's kind of
and when you say that, people are like, "What are they walking around with like a thing of sherbet on their head?" I'm like, no, they just wear probably something. If it's a girl, she might wear like a nice sun, not bright canary yellow, but like a buttercup yellow outfit with pineapple accessory. Dole Whip.
Yeah,
that's Disney bounding. You can't walk in to the park dressed as Gaston, but you could walk in with a red sweater, black tights, and a yellow handkerchief tied around your neck, and you've nailed it.
Well, so my brother, on their last trip down, he walks in, or maybe 2 trips, doesn't matter. He walks in and he was wearing a black short sleeve hoodie. He was wearing kind of maroonish shorts, and he was wearing yellow Vans. And I walked in, I just looked at him, and about 5 seconds after I looked at him, I just said, "Are you bounding as Mickey Mouse?" And he just smiled, and he goes, "Exactly." And I went, "That's fantastic." Mm-hmm. And if he would have been in any other place, he would have just been a regular kid in the mall or whatever. But he walked in, and I went, "That's Mickey Mouse. That's fantastic." But he was able to enhance his own experience. For those in the club that know, you could look and see what was going on, but nobody was lining up to meet my brother yet. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe they will. I don't know, but not for that day.
For Disney bounding, you will you'll get compliments from people because over the years, Disney bounding has gotten quite popular. You see it more with females than males, but thanks to the likes of one Mr. John Stamos, he is making it cool for guys to Disney bound.
Very cool.
John Stamos is a excellent Disney bounder. He nails it.
Yeah,
and he loves to do it.
He does. John Stamos, for those of you who don't know, is a huge Disney fan. Owns multiple pieces of Disney ephemera.
He has, if not the entire thing, he has the lettering from the original Disneyland park sign from the road.
Yeah, like in his yard. Yeah, I think he's got a monorail vehicle, like a Peter Pan thing. I mean, the guy. It's great. You see some people who they're rich and they own big houses, and you're like, well, what's the point of that? He's a guy who has money and is able to buy really cool stuff, and we're able to go, oh, I get that. That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
But when he comes to Disney, like you may see, like his wife, will wear like green, skinny jeans and a purple tank top, and he'll wear a white shirt, blue jeans, and a red belt, and they're Ariel and Eric.
Yeah.
And you know it when you see it. When you see it, you're like, nailed it.
So for you being a theater guy and a bounder, where did that kind of come in for you? Like, when were you like, I think I'm gonna jump into this? How did that like hit you personally?
I don't really do a lot of casual Disney bounding. I've done it on occasion, but it's in those occasions, it's mostly for like a Mickey's Not So Scary, because I'm just not a big cosplayer. I'm not a big costume guy. So for me to do like casual Disney bounding, that's kind of like cosplay for me. So for me, it was when I moved here and I started getting involved with Dapper Day. Mm-hmm. The very first Dapper Day I went to, I just wore my Haunted Mansion wallpaper bow tie and some gray pants and a white shirt and my suspenders and my little newsy cap. And that was my Dapper Day outfit. But for the second one, I did a Flynn Rider bound. As were like some more casual khaki pants, because it's Flynn, he wouldn't dress that nice. So that, and then like a green sweater vest. I had this white shirt with my sleeves cuffed. I had the brown tie undone because, again, Flynn Rider wouldn't have his tie all the way up. He wouldn't look that formal. And, brown flat cap. And I even had like the brown satchel because I was doing some vlogging and some photography. So I needed all my camera equipment. So, my bag was actually kind of functional.
Yeah, fashionable and functional.
Right. So that was the first time that I ever like Disney bounded. And it was fun because people got it and people were like, oh, he's Flynn Rider. And then like I went and got a picture with Rapunzel and she was like, oh, you're dressed as Eugene. Like, of course she's like, do you have a frying pan in your bag? I'm like, no. So
they would
that
not
was
let me in with that.
They would not. So that was the first time that I ever Disney bounded. And then later on, I think I did a Merida bound where I actually wore a kilt. That was fun because the character Merida loved that. She had a fit over it.
Anytime you have an excuse to wear a kilt.
Right. I did later on, as you like my Disney bounding, especially for dappering, my dapper Disney bounds have gotten more extravagant as they've gone, to the fact that I did an Ursula from Little Mermaid, but I did it with a black kilt, with a solid black kilt. And no reason. I could have done pants, but I was like, I'm going to do a kilt. So I did a kilt. And then one year I did a dapper of the bubblegum wall in Epcot.
That's good. That's funny.
So like I said, Disney bounding is not always about a character. Yeah, you can do Snow White, Belle, Gaston, Eric. You can do, Dreamfinder, Figment. You see that one a lot. You can do that, but there's nothing to stop you from Disney bounding as an Instagram wall. I did it. You can do it. And it really is, you really, like with cosplay. With cosplay, everybody's looking for accuracy. Everybody's looking for, if you're going to do this cosplay, you need to do it as best, as well as you can. And there's a ceiling, because you can only go as far as being exactly screen accurate in your work. Whereas Disney bounding, you have the creative blue sky to really do it however you want. And I've seen, say, like Sorcerer Mickey, I've seen people Disney bound Sorcerer Mickey countless different ways. Whether it be a girl in a red dress with a blue, head, blue, like bandana in her hair, or like a head wrap, or I've seen guys do it with like a red hoodie and like a blue skull cap. I've seen so many different ways to do one character. And that's the fun about Disney bounding, is there's no right and wrong way to do it. You can adjust it to however your fashion sense is.
Yeah. And most of the time it is such a subtle thing. Disney bounding is like the LaCroix of cosplay. It's not the thing. It's the essence of the thing. It's down to the bare, like from an artistic standpoint, it is down to the color scheme of that character. Yes. And if you know. And that's really the best way to say it. I mean, there's some that are blatantly obvious. You and I were together one time, and we were at the park and ran into a couple people, and they were, bounding and whatever. And we looked at the guy, and we had to kind of take a second to see what his outfit was. And he had his color scheme of kind of gray and purple and dark. And he had a kind of a pink bow tie, and he had a little thistle on his lapel. and he kind of looked Haunted Mansion-esque. But when I saw the thistle, I thought, that's Eeyore. How cool!
He's Eeyore.
He had his, he had his kind of newsy cap, and it was really, again, anywhere else he would have looked super sharp. He'd look very well dressed, just happen to have a pink tie for a splash of color. But in Disney World, I went, that's Eeyore, and that's really cool.
Yep, and that's the thing. I can do that. That same, Ursula with the kilt. Yeah, I had a purple shirt and a black vest and a tie. My tie tack was the seashell. And
I like that.
But then I could take that I could do, kind of the same thing, same shirt, but I could wear black shorts, black pants, Converse All-Stars, and change it up and make it more casual, make it more dressed down. And that's the thing with Disney bounding is there's more than one way to do anything. You can do a dressy Disney bound and you could do a casual Disney bound. It's really what you want to do. My girlfriend, Lindsay. Lindsay and I had a really sweet Disney bound planned for Dapper Day this past year, to the point that we got some friends of ours to do a hand-painted parasol. Like which to a lot of people will just say it's an umbrella, but it's a dressier fashion, fashionable umbrella. To do a hand painted parasol. This is the furthest and most expensive Disney bound I've ever done. But we were heartbroken when Dapper Day got canceled, for the spring this year due to all the pandemic. So we're going to hold on to it. We're going to put it in our back pocket and hold on to it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll see the light of day in November.
Oh, it'll be back.
But we're keeping it very quiet. We haven't told. We really haven't told anyone. We've told a few people, but we haven't told anybody. And of course, when we tell people, "Oh, Lindsay have something planned," but we're keeping it kind of quiet, everybody immediately thinks like either we're getting married or something else. And I'm like,
sorry, it's just a costume.
Nope. We're just keeping a Disney bound. Just keeping a Disney bound quiet. No, sorry, it's not that exciting. I mean, it's cool, but nope, not that big of a deal.
We'll be right back after these messages.
The Zach Brown Show is brought to you by
Bucky McBoing Boing's Berry Blast Bubble Bath. Fun to say, fun to play.
And
Bitterman's Miracle Mange Balm. Your dog is just itching to get it. So one of our U2 things, I'm not referring to Bono and the Edge, is that you and I are both vinyl guys. Love vinyl collecting. And I've been collecting since I was probably 16. Were you always a vinyl person, or is this something that you've kind of come into recently?
It is definitely something I've come into recently. And when I say recently, I mean like the last 90 days. Like it's a 2020 thing for me. I've always had a couple niche things that I was like, oh, I'd love to own that. That'd be fun. Or I'm in a thrift store and I'm like, oh, here's a original movie soundtrack for Jesus Christ Superstar on vinyl. I have no way to play it, but I'm going to buy this because it's $7, So I'll buy, so I've got that, or I've got, a friend of mine I love, I loved 80s pop. So she got me a couple NXS, nice. Vinyl records because I love NXS. So, I've got a couple NXS albums but for the longest time I had no way to play them. So for a while there, I had one of those, it was all in one, things. It was an AM FM and also had a CD player, and it was a vinyl. It was a record player too, but I didn't know anything about it. I really wasn't committing to collecting. But then this year I was like, I really want to start doing something vinyl. And I had in that collection, I still had a few things. And then I found it was it was an Amazon thing. The 45th anniversary repressing of Pet Sounds. I'm like, all right, so I've got a Pet Sounds on vinyl. And I was like, I want an original Pet Sounds on vinyl. And this spawned kind of I'm going to look more into vinyl. And I started looking into vinyl and learning about it. And I just found myself falling down this rabbit hole of just knowledge And every bit that I learned, I just took more and more in, and it made me like, it just filled me with so much happiness.
Yeah.
And like, because I love music and
it's something tangible.
Like, right. And, you know, I remember as a kid, I remember my mom had, you know, my parents had, like old Alabama records and my, you know, like, or Springsteen or something like that, you know, which now I have those vinyls. I got the record collection, you know, recently,
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Getting that collection that you grew up with and it had around now being yours. That's special.
Yeah. Like all these records that I remember dancing around with my fly swatter guitar to Alabama's mountain music, you know, when I was like 4.
Yeah.
You know, there's pictures of that. So, and that's the record that I was dancing around to. I have it. And, so I just like went down this rabbit hole of knowledge. And I just found myself like getting more and more, just like, if somebody would say obsessed, but you know, like I wanted to know more and I wanted to see more and more of this. And then I was like, oh, I want to own a copy of, and I know people that hear me personally and people by the end of this, you're going to get tired of hearing me say this, but it all came back to Pet Sounds. So there's this guy on YouTube that I watch. He has a record store in Phoenix called the In Groove. And he does these things on YouTube where he's like, you know, here's this album, this classic album. I'm going to show you all the different versions that exist, or at least like the top 10, and show you the best ones, which ones not to buy, why this one's good, why this one's garbage, you know. And he did one for Pet Sounds, and he just went through it, and he was like, this is the 1966 duophonic stereo. Like, you know, you should only buy this because it's the original pressing. Don't listen to it because it sounds like garbage. You know, this is the 1974, you know, repressing edition. It's fantastic. Here's the 2011 repress. Here's the 2017 when they did the album on 2 LPs because it's done at 45 RPM. And I'm like, oh my God. Like,
well, I think that would really amaze so many people to think that there's that many versions of something that most people would just say, oh, you know, this is how it's recorded and that's it.
Like going to, like, obviously when people think about vinyl, they think the first thing people think is, oh, if I ever got into vinyl, you know what I want? I want some first edition Beatles records. Okay. You really don't, because if you can get first pressing UK editions of Sgt. Pepper's, you're going to pay like $500 for it. But yeah, it's going to be cool. It's cool to have. But the first pressings in the US mostly all sound like trash. So you're better off buying, if you want a copy that you can listen to and not just have I have a first edition of Sgt. Pepper's. If you want a copy that you want to listen to, yeah, look at something from like, I'm trying to think, what is it? Acoustic. I can't remember the name of it. But the quality pressing, label, get something from them because those are better sounding pressings than the originals. Yeah. And they also will cost you a lot less money. Like, you know, I was looking around today and I'm not the biggest fan of the Doors, but I wanted a copy of LA Woman. And I'm like, because it's such a good album. And I'm like, I'm going to get a copy of LA Woman, you know, somewhere. And so I started looking around and a friend of mine was like, oh, you got to get this version. I'm like, why? And it's because it's this like radio station copy promo edition that was never sold, but it's got different artwork. And, you know, and I'm like, oh, cool. That's fun to have. And then I looked online and those go for like $200 to $300. And I'm like,
crazy.
I'm never going to spend that. Like, you know, the most valuable record in my collection is my 1966 duophonic stereo, you know, first edition of Pet Sounds. It's the most valuable record in there because to me, sentimentally, it's there. You can't put a value on it.
Yeah. And that's really the greatest thing whether you're in an antique store or a record store or you see it on eBay and you find one of those holy grails for yourself. Nobody else could give a care, but for you, it means so much.
Okay, so I'll tell the story about how I actually found that album. I bought that 45th anniversary edition on Amazon, listened to it a couple of times. It didn't have a record player, but that is now like my main listening copy, that album, right? That version. So I had been hunting every time. My girlfriend is very much into the retro mid-century, furniture and fashion and different things. She's very retro. It's the thing I love the most about her, I think. So she's always wanting to go antique, these antique stores, and these antique stores always have a record section, and they're not always great, but sometimes you get one that kind of knows what they're doing, and you can look around in there, and sometimes you can find some gems, and sometimes you think you found something good, but it really wasn't, and so every time I go into a record store, I was like, I'm gonna dig, and I'm gonna find a Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
And, and so I've been hunting because I wanted a 1966 edition. So we were in this record store, and I wish I could remember the name of it now. We were in this record store in DeLand, which is just north of Orlando. And we were going to a musical at a local theater that night. And we're just walking around, and I'm just perusing. I'm looking through the Beach Boys stuff. Then I go and look at his Beatles stuff. And I'm walking around, and the owner finally, notices that I'm kind of looking around. And he's like, "You're looking for anything in particular?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking for as early edition of Pet Sounds that I can find." And he was like, "I think I've got one." And I was like, "Really?" Because I just looked through your Beach Boys and I didn't see it. And he was like, "No, hold on." And he starts going through these boxes of records. And he's got another guy that works at the store. And they're going through these boxes. And what he had done is he had just gone to an estate sale. This guy had essentially sold him his entire record collection. It was probably hundreds of records for probably, $500. So we're going through these records, and he just pulls out. He was like, "Here you go." And I was like, you can look at it and you're like, "Oh my God, this is it. This is what I've been looking for."
Yeah.
So he's like, let me look at it. Let me inspect it, so I can tell you kind of, what we're looking at. So he pulls it out. He's like, "Man, the vinyl's in really good shape." He cleaned it. He's like, "The sleeve's in great shape." It's got the original insert, like the, capital insert. And he looks up on catalog. He looks it up online, and he was like, this is based off the catalog printing. This is a 1966 original duophonic. And I was like, "I don't even care. You said original 1966. Name your price." And he tells me how much. And of course, I'm sitting here like, let me think about it. Like, I'm sitting here. You can see the hamsters on the wheel. And I'm sitting here going, "You've been looking for this for years. Just get it. Just get it." And before I could pull out my wallet, because I was actually about to offer him cash. I had cash in my pocket. I was going to say, "Would you do it for this much with cash?" And before I could do that, Lindsay broke out her debit card, and it's like, "I'm buying it for him."
That's awesome.
So, and I found that at a local record shop. So it didn't come off of eBay. Somebody selling it for way more than it was worth. He sold it to me for fair market, what it's worth, in value.
And you found it in the wild, we found it in the wild. That's the best.
And I supported a local record shop just months before this all hit. Man, you know how it is with vinyls. We have a wonderful shop here locally called Triangle Vinyl.
Yeah.
Like, they essentially shut down in March, and they just now reopened, like weekends only. And like occasionally, like on a Wednesday, he'll open from noon to 4 or something like that. And record stores took a huge hit. Like, it was already a tough business to be in, because this is a niche thing. Not everybody, when you can pay $9.99 a month to Spotify or Apple Music and listen to whatever you want, whenever you want, with a simple search and the click of a button.
You don't have to get up. You don't have to flip it over. You don't got to put a new one in.
Nope. You don't got to get up. You ain't got to do nothing. You ain't got to take care of it. You don't have to. It doesn't take up space. It's,
But here's what I like in it too. MP3 is like a Coke machine. You can get your fix and you can get it fast and you can get it anywhere and it's convenient. Mm-hmm. Vinyl records are like tea, where it takes a little bit for it to steep. You don't just have it instantly. So it takes a moment before you get it, and it's warm, or it's hot, and you're going to sit back and you're going to enjoy it. I love vinyl records. When I am stressed or if I've had a long week, my favorite thing to do is to put on either classic Jackie Gleason orchestra or some sort of classical thing. I love Polynesian, like tiki music, like Martin Denny. But then I'll put on, the Eagles live, whatever, and just sit in my chair with a cup of coffee and just listen to the pop and hiss as that, the wax starts spinning. It is one of the greatest experiences. I love when I hear about new, like, guys coming into the vinyl world. And I don't really remember when you started this. I mean, I knew it was recent and how we got on that subject.
It's seriously like.
But when that bug bit, it bit February. Hard.
Yeah. Like it really did. And I won't say how much I've spent on vinyl. It's not as much as people think it is. But I've bought some albums that, I've wanted, and I've bought some things that, like I've always liked, Steve Martin. So like I bought Steve Martin's Let's Get Small on vinyl, and I have like Bob Newhart's The Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart.
Yeah.
And I even have like one or two Richard Pryor albums because I love comedy albums. And I got these on vinyl, and most of the time you can find these things for cheap online. If you're not looking for mint copies and, things like that, if you're just looking for a good playable quality copy, you can get it, something like that, $5-6. You can get them for you can get them for cheap. But then, when you think like, 90, going back to my 90s, man, I went through the 90s grunge and alternative era. So I just bought some SRC vinyl and Music on Vinyl did some pressings of some Silverchair albums, and they did them on they did Neon Ballroom on this beautiful blue translucent double vinyl, super cool. And then they did one of their later albums on this green yellow, almost peridot, like it, almost like a neon green, like Mountain Dew yellow color.
That's awesome.
It's super cool. I'll send you a picture of it. It's super cool looking, and they sound wonderful. They're great pressings. So I've gotten to, there's those things. I'll spend a little money. Like my 66 Pet Sounds. I knew I was going to spend some money on that. It'll probably be the most valuable vinyl in my collection.
And now you have it
for a while, but I have it, and you were saying like, vinyl or MP3s are a Coke machine. You can get your fix. It's quick, but vinyl is tea. To me, MP3s and vinyl, it's the same product. It's Coca-Cola, but MP3 is high fructose corn syrup Coke. Vinyl is, real cane sugar, glass Mexican bottle, Coke. Mexican Coke.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
It doesn't leave your teeth feeling like they're wearing sweaters.
Yeah. And it tastes different. It tastes
better. It's just better.
There's something about Coke out of a glass bottle. Like, it tastes different.
Yep.
It tastes better. And that better is called compression. And another thing, like with some, with MP3, like with iTunes and Spotify. Look, I have Spotify, and I have that because I'm driving in the car. I can't take my record player in the car. With Spotify and iTunes is you pay that $9.99 a month, but you don't own it.
Yeah.
At some point, that streaming. What if streaming ended tomorrow?
Yeah.
What if Spotify all of a sudden? Remember Napster? When you were Napster, when going back to the 90s and early 2000s, Napster, we were illegally downloading music.
Yeah.
But what happened? Metallica decided one day, well, you're not going to do that anymore. And they sued, and Napster eventually shut down. So what if one day, and this won't happen, for probably ever, but what if one day Spotify just goes, you know what? We're not a thing anymore, and shuts down.
I hope you people are getting both our podcasts on vinyl.
Yes. Yeah. But, what's that going to happen? You don't own it. There's something about owning it.
Liner notes. There's pictures. Notes, sometimes you get stickers.
Holding it in your hand and feeling it, that physical touch of owning a piece of music that someone put their heart and soul into. And when you look at the physicality, there's a Jack White album. I posted a video of it from a few years ago. I think it's called Lazaretta. And here's something you can't do with an MP3. This album plays from the inside outward. So instead of dropping the needle on the outside, you drop it in the middle, and it plays backwards.
Of course,
and it's meant to do that. So it'll play from the inside out. Then on the outside of it, after the record is over, there's a hidden groove. That's essentially a hidden track. Then on the inside, under the label, there's another one under the label. That's and cool. that one, you have to play your record player at 45 RPM to hear it. And I'm like, you can't do that with anything other than vinyl.
Yeah.
You can't do it. And that's Queen, so cool to me.
Queen did Made in Heaven, which was it was an album that they made after Freddie's passing, using recordings that were incomplete before he passed. And what they did was that the note and the frequency that album starts on is the same note and frequency that the album ends on. So that was Brian May's way of saying that basically if you just hit go and let it run, it loops forever. It just is the music is never ending, and it just picks right back up where it starts and the music plays on. And now you'd have to have two record players to do it seamlessly, but it's that same, you can't do that on MP3. It's so fantastic, these little things that they do for us. They do it for those people that are looking for those tangible moments. They're looking for the things that they can put their hands on. There's nothing like undoing the cellophane, sliding out the fresh wax and spinning it in your fingers, setting it on the turntable and hitting go. Yep. It's just special. It's like riding with the windows down. It might not be as efficient as with windows up and the air conditioning going, but you just can't beat it.
It's something that I love doing, and it'll be the thing that, I'll drop, money here and there on something. If there's something that I really like gets repressed or gets a really good edition of something. Like right now I'm kind of toying with the edition of Token of Queen, with which pressing of A Night at the Opera that I really want. Cause
You'll have to let me know what you land on for that. And
I love that album. And, there's pressing after pressing after pressing of it. And, you talk about like the value of, why is this record so valuable? And another one is like Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. You have the edition that you've shown me that you have came with like stickers and a poster.
Yeah.
It came with this really, really cool like extras. And that was something that came with older pressings, because you have an older pressing of it. You don't have a repress. But if you go back and like, you got to go back. If you find, I think it's like the blue triangle, like on the label pressing, and I'm like, what? Like that's
very,
the
very
one
nerdy details.
That's the true original pressing, and like that's why that one's like $800, or like actually I think that one goes for like a couple grand. It's outrageous.
Yeah, Michael and I were bouncing around in giddy as schoolgirls through FaceTime one night, checking out our vinyl collections. And when we saw that I had the one with all the inserts, we were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This might be worth so much more. And then when you look, it was like, wrong label. You got nothing.
Yeah, you got nothing. You got nothing. That's like one of my favorite movies is Blade Runner. And you showed, and I didn't even know it existed. You showed me, I think it was was it a record store day?
No, it
Exclusive?
was Audio Fidelity, I believe, is the company. They kind of make
Audio
like
Fidelity.
limited
That's
run.
who I'm thinking of.
Oh, it's fantastic.
If you can get Audio Fidelity, did pressings of Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper's, the two most classic Beatles albums outside of, Rubber Soul and Revolver. Those, if you can get those are good. Those are better sounding pressings than any original you'll ever find.
Yeah,
you should only get the originals if you just want to say I have an original of this. But you have so it was Audio Fidelity that did it. It's this red translucent vinyl of the Blade Runner soundtrack, and I remember when you showed me that, I was like,
well, I geek out there, and then all of a sudden I go, but check this out. Same company also made Tron in translucent blue. And again, for those, those who say I couldn't care less about Tron, but for those of us who really dig it, it's like, yes, my vinyl is clear and it's blue. And that's so dorky and so nerdy, but everybody has that thing that they geek out about. I don't care if it's gardening or if it's hot rods or Star Wars figures, whatever. Everybody has that one thing that they are striving to collect.
Yep, everybody's got it. Like I laugh at the fact that my Funko Pop collection started when I bought my 11th Doctor Matt Smith Doctor Who Funko Pop, and I was like, these are fun, these are cool, I like this. But I'm only going to buy ones that are like special, like this one, like means a lot. And now I think I don't have that many. I have like about 12 to 15, but that's way more than I ever thought I would have. But then I've seen people that have literal like wall cases.
Oh yeah.
Of Funko Pops. Oh, here's this variant. And like, I'm like, oh my gosh, but vinyl record, the same thing. It's the same thing. Yeah, I could have bought, you could have bought just a Blade Runner on black, the Vangelis, soundtrack on black vinyl, and there it is. But no, this is the red translucent vinyl. And that, you told me, I think you said you paid like what, $40 for it?
$40. Yeah.
Right? It goes for about $300 on eBay now.
It's ridiculous. Nobody come to my house. Don't come hunting for my record collection.
Right. I found it. A guy in Australia had it on Discogs, which is, if you're looking at getting into vinyl records, discogs.com is an excellent source.
Yeah, excellent resource.
Excellent source because it's a marketplace. It's not auction. So you can take your records and list them on Discogs, and people can just buy them for a flat rate than the shipping. So this guy in Australia had it, and the same red translucent Blade Runner, and he had it for like 80 Australian, which I was like, oh, what's the conversion on that? So I go to Google and I type in the conversion, and essentially it was like $40 American. And I was like, buy it now. I don't even care. Like, I don't care how much he wants for the shipping. Like, he only wanted like $20 for the shipping. So for like $60 total, like, I bought a record that sells on eBay for, $300. And I mean, sells, not just lists. So, people like, make the joke about, oh, Disney VHS, oh, the old clamshell VHS, a copy of Beauty and the Beast will sell for $10,000. No, it won't. It'll list for $10,000, but it won't sell for $10,000. So these Blade Runner Red Translucent sells for $300. So when I found it for that, I was like,
and it's just flat wax.
Yep. So it can be a very expensive collection, be a very expensive hobby, but
it's an investment. I keep telling myself it's an investment.
Yes, because again, that's something that you can preserve and keep, and some things will only go up. Look, when people bought Sgt. Pepper's when it first came out, they paid what? $2?
Yeah.
$2, $3, maybe. I'm not sure how much Sgt. Pepper sold for when it was released. But imagine, little Nigel in London, in Liverpool, going down to the record store and buying Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the new song, the new album from the Beatles. Pays his little, measly couple pounds for this album. Let's say he buys 2 copies, goes home, listens to one, and says, I'm going to keep this one, and I'm never going to open it. I'm going to keep it in the wrap, keep it in the shrink wrap. nowadays, that shrink wrap Sergeant Pepper's will sell for about $3,000.
Yeah.
And not all albums will do that, of course. Sergeant Pepper's is definitely, definitely one of the most valuable, one of the greatest albums of all time. So not all albums will do that, but some do. Yeah. So some of those, like that original Pet Sounds, look, man, it may be, I think it cost, when it came out, it cost $2.15. And definitely paid more than that. But in 50 years, when Pet Sounds turns 100, is it going to be worth more than what I paid for it? Hey, you never know.
Who knows?
Who knows, man? That's the fun in it. That's the fun in it.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for just taking time to
absolutely, man,
share with us and talk about the nerdy stuff that we love. And hopefully somebody listening is going, yes, me too. And that is the point of this show, that you are our friend. You are sitting here at this table and you're having a cup of coffee or whatever and just enjoying this time and walking away. So when you are looking for your friend Michael to see about more about what he can do, they need to search for you where?
You can definitely do the YouTube. It's kind of the Moving Platform. I very humbly compare it to how Walt originally designed Disneyland, in that the Moving Platform is a hub, and from that hub are many different lands. There's the podcast. You can find that on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts. I think I've dropped it on just about everything. You can find it there. You can find, obviously, the youtube.com/the moving platform. That's the vlogs. That's the come along with me on this adventure as we go through Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, all the different Orlando theme parks. And then there's the website, which is, right now, it is moving-platform.com. Somebody is sitting on the movingplatform.com, and I check it every week. One of these days, they're going to let it go. And when they do, I'm going to be there to scoop it.
You'll be there.
I'm going to be there to scoop it. So I'm just saying, if you are the owner of the movingplatform.com and you're not using it, first of all, you can contact me. Let's talk price. But one of these days you're going to let it go and I'm going to scoop it. So
let my website go.
Moving-platform.com. You can find that's the blog, and the website kind of hubs everything. Instagram, the Moving Platform on Instagram. Find me there as well. So
very cool.
It's kind of, everything. It's every little, every land does something different. Instagram is photography. Platform, the podcast is the podcast. The vlogs are the vlogs. It's kind of, you just kind of go in whatever way you want to go.
That's right. And always remember, watch your step.
Watch your step. I don't know how that, I need it. The funny story behind that, some people hate it and some people love it. I didn't know what I wanted to end with. So I was like, I need something. And, famously, if you watch, theme park vlogs, people like Tim Tracker always says, and now it's time to pay the price, which is a reference to, I believe, to Home Movies, the old animated series. He says, and now it's time to pay the price. And not to copy that, but I needed something kind of fun to say at the end, a way to say goodbye. And I was like, it's the Moving Platform, which is a subtle reference to the People Mover. I was like, watch your step when approaching the Moving Platform. That's how I'll say goodbye. So I say, hey, thanks for coming along. Make sure you like and subscribe, share with your friends and family. And as always, watch your step. That's how I always end it.
Yeah.
And it's been the thing. Some people think it's goofy. Some people think it's dumb. And some people are like, you need to put that on a t-shirt. So I don't know.
Well, I'd wear a watch your step t-shirt.
Maybe we'll see what we can do.
You could be taken as different things, but I love watch your step.
Yeah. Okay, watch your step.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you just, again, taking your time to share with us and sit and just share about your life and where you've come from and the stuff that we love right now. So we'll see you around.
Hey, man, thanks. And hey, watch your step.
Well, that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Once again, I'd like to thank our guest, Michael Ruffin, for spending some time with us. Please be sure to check out his YouTube channel and podcast, both titled The Moving Platform. You just might hear a familiar voice. Once again, The Moving Platform over on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and really wherever you get a podcast. Want to stay connected with our show? You can follow along on Instagram and give us a like on Facebook. I'll post behind-the-scenes pictures and updates on all the latest episodes. So like, comment, and subscribe. And while you're at it, if you give us a 5-star rating and a nice word. I'm Zach Brown, and I want you to remember, pancakes are just crepes without a gym membership. Have a good one.